Well, now I'd like to introduce Dennis Brennan, who is building a diorama and using some of his products in the construction of it, primarily his ballast products. So Dennis, welcome.
I am here in a hotel room in sunny Florida, working on a layout. And so I thought we'll just carry on. It doesn't make any difference where I'm coming from. So we've been talking about, for the last few weeks, this is ostensibly about my ballast product, Brennan's Better Ballast, and some of the scenery stuff that I have. And I started that out, and we will get there right now. I'm going to share the screen. Here's where we started. This was going to be all about ballasting, but I realized that you can't just talk about ballasting without talking about what goes underneath it and what the ballasting is all goes. So I built a diorama, and we've talked about how that diorama came, how I put it together. And so now we went from that to this. This is the final product. Okay. Big difference. Started here, and now we end up here. And over the last few shows, I showed how we went from one place to another. Now we're finally going to talk about the ballast. Now, what you see along here is a combination of my yard ballast, which is a very dark ballast, and then what I call superior sand, which interestingly enough comes from Lake Superior. Big surprise. And it's really quite nice. But the whole idea behind this is, if you're going to go through all the trouble of ballasting, you need to have a good base for it. And it doesn't matter. People use foam, people use cork, people use all kinds of things. People use ceiling tiles. I happen to use foam, and foam works really well. This is pink construction foam. And then everything else just kind of flows from there. If you can give your scenery a little elevation anywhere, it's going to enhance the scene. And as you can see, I've got a lot of different levels here. I've got angles, I've got levels, I've got what I call street schmutz. I've got, I even have holes in the street where you can see the old cobblestone. All right, so this gives you a good close-up of the ballasting. Now, ballast is not a problem. It's not, some people make it into this big deal. It's really not. It's very simple. And what I did first was I laid down my yard ballast, which is this darker stuff that you see right here. Is this thing turning pink like you're seeing, like I'm seeing on my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know why that's happening. I'm sorry about that.
It's Valentine's Day.
Yeah, Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. Forgive me, guys. I am so sorry. Anyway,
All right.
the very dark stuff is the yard ballast. And what I did is, if you use the yard ballast by itself, that's fine. But I don't like to do that because it's too monotonous. I mean, that's fine, but you need to give it a little pop. And so what you see alongside the yard ballast is the superior sand. That's all those other little kind of colors that you're seeing in there. And then there's really fine particles. I have two kinds of superior sand. One is coarse and one is fine. And the fine stuff you see, I sprinkle that around, and it's random. You can see how random this is. I think that looks really natural, especially for a siding. This is a siding. Sidings are usually not ballasted and kept up like mainline. Why? Because they don't have the traffic going over them, and the traffic that does go over them is pretty slow. So this one actually is not bad compared to some sidings. And then how do you transition? Okay, I don't like to see a straight, solid line of ballast. There's always a transition area between the ballast and the scenery alongside of it. And that's where I use a lot of the superior sand. And you can see it makes a really nice transition. It kind of looks, you know, even on a main line, you may have a little bit more even line of ballast, but there is still that transition area before you get to greenery. Even if the greenery comes up to the tracks, there's still got to be this little area like I have here. Okay, here's another view. Now what you're seeing here, I didn't show it before, and I'm not going to show you the whole building. This is a new kit that I'll be coming out with. I've incorporated, that's why I built this diorama. I built it just for this kit. It's going to be used as for the ad. But you can see when you're doing scenery, it's not just about ballasting. And then you can see how the ballast I've allowed, because this is a hill, I've allowed the ballast to kind of fall down the hill alongside that little retaining wall. And that's an HO scale retaining wall, but it really doesn't matter. If somebody comes to the layout or to your layout and starts measuring things, tell them to go away because it looks good. It looks right to my eyes. And so I'm fine with it. And you can see the greenery. All I did was mix a lot of different colors and shades and stuff. There's all kind of, it sort of works together. It's random. Try to be random. The more colors and textures you can add that are within the same range. Now you don't want to go from, you know, like bright reds in there. You might have a few little dots or pops of other colors, like where there were some flowers, but try to keep everything in sort of a range of colors in the same palette. And I think what I have here does that very well. And of course, you can also see that there's, I start with brown paint, and then I work up and do the scenery in layers. You can always add more. Less is more. Start with one layer and then just keep building on top of it. That's what I do. I think that works really well, as you can see here. And you can see also in the street, the kind of schmutz that you see around the street, that's called street schmutz. I sell it. It works great. And all I did to get the cobblestone effect was I just laid down a few pieces of like cobblestone. It was a plastic sheet that was in my junk box, and I put that down, and you saw that before. And then I just the street is actually made with Durham's water putty, I skim coated everything with that. Okay, here's another view of the ballast along the tracks. Again, it's yard ballast and superior sand coarse and the superior sand fine. Now, as far as the technique and what you use for glue, that's real simple. I use 1 part white glue and 2 parts water. Regular Elmer's white glue and water, and I do not use an eyedropper. Eyedroppers are good for HO and maybe N scale, but in O scale, I think that's kind of tedious, and it takes too long. I use a squeeze bottle. Think of a ketchup or a mustard kind of container that you get at the local grocery store for picnics. They might hold about a pint of material, maybe a little more, 12 ounces. I mix up the stuff in a gallon container, and then I just pour it into the squeeze bottle as I need it. And that works real great. But the first step is wet water. What's wet water? I'm sure a lot of you guys know what that is. But for anybody who doesn't, it's simply a few drops of dish detergent like Dawn in 16 ounces of water or so. The amount isn't critical. Some people like to use alcohol. You can do that too. Alcohol works well. Some people use actually, I didn't have any dish detergent at the time when I was doing this. So I had a bottle of Windex, and I sprayed the track with Windex. And what you do that before you do your glue mixture, and that breaks down the surface tension of the glue. If you don't do that, if you don't use wet water, you're not going to have a good ballast adhesion. And I'm sure you've seen it where it looks good, but if you touch the ballast, it crumbles. And the reason it crumbles is because somebody didn't use enough wet water. And what happens then is the ballast kind of puddles up, and it'll eventually sink in, but it doesn't permeate the ballast. It only goes on the top. So it looks good, but if you touch it, it's going to crumble and it's all soft inside. I've seen that lots of times. So it's kind of a wet process. And that's just the way it is. Don't be afraid of it. Just do it. All right, here's another view. Again, I'm showing, if you don't have greenery, a lot of the greenery will keep in real life, keeps things from going down the hill. But where there isn't any greenery and where there's a logical place, you can see where the ballast and the dirt wants to wash down around the retaining wall, between the retaining wall and that stone wall. And I use the stone wall a little bit, and that retaining wall just breaks everything up. The more textures and things that you can add to your scenery, the better it's going to look.
Dennis, I hate to do this, but I gotta see you're almost out of time.
All right. Well, this is where it ended up. And if there's any questions, just feel free to email me or give me a shout on the phone. I'm available.
Dennis, I think it came out great, and I really do appreciate you doing this. I hope everybody learned something about ballasting track, because I think that's so important to our modeling, and I can't thank you enough for doing it.
Hey, no problem. I hope it was enjoyable, and I'll see you next time.
That's great. Thank you so much.
All right.
Now,
Bye. Bye, guys.
Dennis, let me ask you a question. Do you need another segment next time to finish the diorama?
No, I think if you felt like it was, good, I think that worked for me.
That worked for me too. And if
Okay.
anybody has any questions, they can always contact me. So thanks so much, Dennis. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Glad to do it. See you guys.